Thought I would re-record a little video reviewing these numbers that does not have the ground mount system, and it does have the HVAC. The government has a program out there that they're getting rid of, but for now, they're giving incentives off of a new roof when it's combined with solar, switchgear, EV chargers, that kind of thing. And this customer did 5 different projects with us using the power company funding. And I haven't met one customer that wanted to do it just to be green. That's a good benefit. But this customer wanted to use the power company funding, and he also he wanted the incentives to offset the cost of that roof. So here's really why he did it. Roof and solar funded was 1.9 minus incentives that were almost 1.8. So the incentives covered all but $119,000 of the project. And then he saved $73,000 per year. And under the cumulative cash flow, when he made his final payment in year 5, it's still positive $8,575. So that's why he did it. We spend time finding whatever incentives are available so you don't have to. And we've been doing it since 1985 on only commercial projects, different energy saving things over those years. But right now, the largest incentives are on a combined roof and solar project. So the power company funding, you have to submit a couple years financials if you want to use it, but it's direct on-bill funding. So there's no payments until the project's fully completed, but you own the system. You take all the incentives for the whole project. Your first payment is once the project's fully completed. So probably sometime next spring or summer, your first payment would be, and it would be one of 60 payments. So the largest incentive, most of the country's a 30% tax credit, but in your location there's an extra 10% because of employment in the energy sector, and that's a dollar for dollar tax credit. You can go back 3 years and amend returns and get back the money you paid the IRS, or they're good for 22 years going forward. And there's a market for them. You can actually sell them for up to 90 cents on the dollar. So Trump did make in his big new bill 100% depreciation for year 1. So that part is new. It used to be 60% before he signed that bill. And right now you can still lock in the 40% tax credit, new roof, switchgear, solar, and EV chargers. We can also add in, which we're doing, the lighting, HVAC, and compressed air. That would be part of the 100% depreciation, but not part of the 40% tax credit. But we can also fund all of those items. And we can safe harbor the project by just ordering some materials. And I think 5% is what you have to put down for the project. So we can order materials. Then it's qualified. So you can have all the way until the end of 2027 to complete it. Illinois also has incentives from the state, solar renewable energy credits. They pay you every quarter for having the solar array turned on in 15 years, but they pay you in the first 7 years. So, and the power company does have inverter rebates. And so they're not just being generous. This is money they charge for different efficiency programs on everyone's power bill. So unless you do a project, you never see this money back. We also use only Bloomberg certified tier 1 equipment. So the panels are assembled in the United States. They're looking to have 100% of their panels produced here fairly soon. But the inverters are tier 1. And so the panels, we actually guarantee the production number for the full 30 years. Here's a customer, CamCraft. Their only regret is that they did the roof a year prior to doing the solar. So because it wasn't one single project, they lost out on a 40% tax credit on the cost of the roof. And here's the numbers for CamCar without the ground mount. So this was the number I reviewed with Sherry earlier. 96 panels, 1 inverter. No holes are placed in the roof whatsoever. It's a weighted ballasted system. And we tie into the meter, usually down the outside of the building. And then ComEd will install what they call net metering. So when you're closed and it's producing energy, that energy gets measured and sent out to the grid, but you get a 1-for-1 credit for that. So at nighttime or in the winter, you can utilize those credits. They stay on your account number until they're used up. So the system size, when you add up the panels, it's a 56 kilowatt system. As I mentioned, we guarantee the 65,193 kilowatt hours. We guarantee that production number for 30 years, and we use 3.8 hours of sunlight per day. So we're very conservative. The energy consumption based on the bills shows we're covering 27% of the energy use in your building there, saving you $7,800 per year. So when you plug in 65,193 kilowatt hours into the EPA website, it spits out 46 CO2 metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions were reduced per year. So the roof on its own was 120,000. The inverter rebate we deduct from the project, and we actually get that payment, but we're basically guaranteeing it, so you never have to pay that. And so the net project cost cash is $267,949. If you wanted to use the power company funding from Constellation, they give us a formula. We tack it in there, but you would give them a couple years financials, and they might be able to fine tune that number a little bit. But they're really funding the project with no lien on the equipment, and they're actually waiting till it's probably a 6-year program, because if by you not making a payment, a single payment, until it's fully completed and turned on, you'd probably be looking at maybe June or July of next year when it's turned on. So that's when the payments would start, and you'd have 60 payments from that point in time. So the tax credit was 30%, but now it's 40%. And the depreciation was 60, now it's 100%. And for our calculations, we used a 24% tax bracket for federal and 9.5% for the state. And this Illinois SREC money, they start paying you that the first quarter that the project's turned on, and you get a check every quarter for 7 years. So over to the right, roof and solar funded 364 minus 227 in incentives. So what's not covered by the incentives is 136,000, and you're saving 7,800 per year. So by adding in the HVAC, it creates a longer ROI, but usually on the roof and solar, it's a pretty quick ROI. Sometimes 5 years, sometimes less. So if you have to do a roof, there's never an ROI on the roof on its own, or the HVAC on its own. But in this case, a year from now, you'd be making a payment. So it'd be this 134,000 divided by 12 payments, would show up on your bill probably next summer. Then you'd have the savings. We put a 3% accelerator in there. And then you start receiving 4 checks, one each quarter, to add up to almost $8,000. They hold the deposit for year 15 to be sure that you leave it turned on. You get the 96,000 in tax credit, and then you get depreciation, which we spread over 6 years because we're not sure exactly how you would take advantage of that. But when you're done making your last payment in year 5, the project's negative 424,000. That's with the HVAC, and then it whittles that down. So eventually, these panels guarantee that production number for 30 years, but they'll keep generating energy long after that. A normal capital improvement on that, you can depreciate it, but there's no tax credit. So it does take quite a while to get these projects going. The interconnection with ComEd, they're taking longer and longer to give that approval. So we put in 25, 26 weeks pre-construction, 8 to 10 weeks on construction, and 2 to 3 weeks post-construction. But we would start with the roof immediately if you use the power company funding, or that you wanted to fund it on your own. Here's a customer with a 5-year ROI, needed pretty expensive new roof and a pretty big solar array, but because the roof was large enough, we were able to cover 100% of their usage.
About a year and a half later, we can say never paid a dime for anything. Got over $2 million worth of solar equipment on the roof, and and we're going great. Jim and his team at Revenue Task Force did a great job finding money everywhere between incentives and grants and rebates, tapping into federal money, state money. The energy companies are offering an incentive. So it was really, really a great program. Really happy with what we did here.
And with that, thanks for listening. Let me know if you have any questions. We'd be happy to come out in person again, or we can get on a Zoom call if there's other questions and you want to do it that way. So if you do have any other projects, that tax credit is available for projects that we start sometime before the 4th of July of next year. Thanks. Have a good day.